All right, hey everyone, this is Richard Kaiser. I'm a marketing manager over here at Rented. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Tonight we're going to have Andrew McConnell, our CEO here at Rented, talk about vacation rental industry trends, what you need to be successful in 2016. Just some background on Andrew. He's the CEO up here. He founded the company after hearing two vacation homeowners talk about their horror stories of all the time and hassle involved in the self-management of their second homes. With degrees from Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law, and Cambridge University, as well as experience working with some of the largest companies in the world during his time at both McKinsey & Company and Axiom, Andrew is excited to apply all he's learned to the sharing economy in order to create a better experience for everyone. Andrew is considered a travel industry expert featured on CBS, U.S. News and World Reports, Bloomberg News, and USA Today. Andrew has also written thought pieces for Betterment and writes the quarterly trends update for the Vacation Rental Managers Association. Additionally, he serves as the industry trends expert at the Vacation Rental World Summit. For those of you who don't know, Rented is the leading online marketplace that helps homeowners find the best and most competitive property managers for their homes. Using Rented, homeowners can pass off all the risk and work of self-managing and collect guaranteed monthly income from their property. If anyone today has questions throughout the presentation, we definitely want to encourage you all to submit your questions or comments through GoToWebinar. As we're going through, we'll try to answer those questions as best we can. We feel, these normally go better for us when they're a little interactive, and we kind of like the collaboration here. We'll also be sharing the slides with all of you via email, as well as take a look out. We'll have an article on the takeaways from the webinar. So be sure to check out our Rented blog. And with that, I give you guys Andrew.
Hi everyone, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us on a Thursday evening. Before we dive in, I just wanted to kind of set the table on what it is that we're going to cover today. So first, I want to just look at the sharing economy today and really define it, and why is it something that we're even talking about tonight. Secondly, we want to look at this past year. We just finished 2015, we're jumping into 2016. What did we see over the course of that year? And more importantly, looking forward, what do we expect to see in 2016? And though we'll do it throughout, we will also dive in at the end on some of the implications for you personally, and for you as a vacation homeowner, and what you need to do. And we do appreciate everybody who submitted their questions and everything ahead of time. It sounded like the two big things that were on a lot of people's minds were, one, bookings, and the other being on-the-ground operations, and just how difficult it is, even if you can handle the bookings and deal with guests remotely, to actually still scrub a toilet or change those sheets if you're hundreds of miles away. So we'll definitely touch on those as well. So with that, let's start with the sharing economy today. So everybody knows the sharing economy is the hot new trend. It's Airbnb and Uber invented it. It's this amazing thing that's brand new, and we all love it. The interesting thing is it's not very new, right? And I'm sure most people on this webinar today are well aware of that. This is something, and you could pick any date you wanted. I think Noah with the Ark was loading. He was sharing that Ark with all sorts of animals, 2 by 2. But the date that Rentals United uses is 1624, when King Louis XIII built his hunting lodge out in Versailles. And regardless of the date you pick, the really important thing to realize is that this idea of having assets that are not fully utilized, or second homes that are not fully utilized, that you allow other people to use, goes back way, way, way before the 2000s, far before smartphones and Airbnb and Uber. But then the question becomes, why do we think it's new? Why are we talking about it so much now? Well, the answer is because of this PR coup, almost, of the sharing economy, and talking about it in this new light, like Airbnb and Uber and VRBO and these others have done. It's absolutely grown the pie to proportions really never seen before. There are different numbers that have been put out there, but the number, this I believe comes from a focus, Price Waterhouse Coopers report said, look, the sharing economy in 2013 was 15 billion, and traditional businesses in that time on the rental sector were 240 billion. But not only is the sharing economy projected to grow more than 20x in just over 10 years, but it's going to get so big that it's going to be on par with the traditional economy in this rental sector. And even in vacation rentals alone, and this is where the numbers conflict a little bit, Euromonitor put out that in 1999, the vacation rental industry worldwide was worth $40 billion. That sounds really big, $40 billion. And yet by 2015, it had increased by nearly 4x. It was $150 billion spent in vacation rentals last year. And Piper Jaffray expects it to grow to $285 billion just in the short-term rental sector by 2025. So the reason we're talking about it and the reason we should care is the popularity of this sharing economy idea is something we can all benefit from because there's a lot more money coming in. So if that's the sharing economy today, what do we see in the sharing economy in 2015? Well, I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have experienced one of the number one trends, which is that of regulation. Things that people used to believe if they owned a home, owned a property, that they had rights to that home or property, and they could do with that asset what they wanted because that was their property rights. And we're increasingly finding that nosy neighbors and the NIMBYs and not in my backyard types or just meddling city councilmen really want to try to create problems. We've seen regulation a lot in New York. We've seen it proposed in San Francisco, though it was ultimately that Proposition F was struck down. But all over the country, all over the world, Barcelona, France, etc., governments really are cracking down. To the extent that just yesterday, or no, last week, Chicago proposed something where owners would go to jail for one strike if they illegally rented out their property. If they let someone stay in their own home and charge them money for it, they could go to jail. It's pretty amazing. But it's not all a sad story. It's not all a scary story. There are a lot of bad regulations coming through, but now governments are starting to see the upside as well. And the business minister in the UK already came out in support of Airbnb and Uber and the sharing economy and said, hey, look, this is the next growth sector. This is how we're going to stimulate the economy. This is how we're going to get people to be able to start making money. And it's not just there. Colorado has some sensible regulations. New Orleans recently just proposed to actually legalize there in a market where it has traditionally been illegal because they're starting to see the potential benefits of doing that. So it's a very good position to be in, really, if you look at it in the longer run.
Hey, Andrew, it looks like we just got a question in kind of related to some of this stuff that and the homeowner asked. It seems that there are more favorable regulations in places like New Orleans. What do you think regulations will look like in the long term?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, right? Yogi Berra said it's dangerous to make predictions, especially about the future, and this is no exception. On both sides, you have terrible regulation, you have sensible regulation. It's no guarantee that one will win out. I think you have to hope, because there's so much money at play. There's so many people that are getting used to a world in which they have access to these assets. They have access to these experiences they never had before, that in the long run, sensible regulation will win out. So long as there are communities, there are city, state, national governments putting in sensible regulation, even as ones put in nonsensical regulation, by being able to compare the results, and one sees the coffers of increase, right? They're getting all these tax dollars and driving all this economic activity to their community because they did sensible regulation, versus another that just sees property values shoot down because people are not going to buy those properties as investments because they can't use them how they want, and they are not attracting travelers and guests to their home or to their community, and so they're losing in restaurants and movie theaters, at grocery stores, etc. And so I may be overly optimistic and having a vested interest, but I would have to think, yes, for the most part, sensible regulation will win. That's no guarantee in any given community it will. And so that's why it's really important, and this is where we get into some implications, in thinking about proactively what can and should you be doing. So there are really three phases when it comes to regulation in your particular market and impacting you personally. And the first phase is when it's not even discussed yet. It's not on the table. Nobody's talking about regulation. Everything's fine. And there are a lot of people when everything's fine say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I'm not gonna think about it. I'm not gonna worry about it. That is the wrong approach. That is when you're not having a contentious debate and people trying to take away your property rights is exactly when you want to start building the case, because that's when things are going well. Show how much economic activity is being driven to your community. Show how many jobs are created. Show why it's a good thing for your community and for the government to have this at their disposal. If you do that and still you get to the second phase when discussions have started, you get a neighbor that needs a new cause and decides, look, I hate this Airbnb idea, I'm going to go crack down on it, then is really when you need to start coalition building. So find like-minded individuals, find the companies there who are benefiting from it, and build a community, build a group around what needs to happen in your community and discuss it and take advantage of a lot of the resources out there. So there's the short-term rental advocacy center that's an industry body, totally free. It's available online where they have all sorts of resources and case studies and economic impact studies at your disposal to help you build the case once those discussions start. And the third phase, unfortunately, is once the regulations pass. And ideally, those are going to be sensible regulations, and they make sense, and they help homeowners, and they help travelers, and they help the community, but that's not always the case. And once that happens, that's when you might want to start looking at people like Matt Curtis, who works with HomeAway, and is the industry expert when it comes to regulation and serves on the VRMA board. But there are a lot of resources out there, and it's just the single biggest takeaway is stay proactive. All right, well, what's the next thing that we really saw over the course of 2015? This was the growth in urban markets. And so you might have noticed that we started off talking about the sharing economy as opposed to vacation rentals. I would imagine most people here today think of themselves as vacation homeowners, vacation rentals. And yet the sharing economy has really grown the pie, not just in these vacation spaces. Really how they've done it is by expanding where people will stay in alternative accommodations, something other than a hotel or a traditional bed and breakfast. And this initiative, it's something Airbnb started with from the beginning, but you're now starting to see HomeAway get into it as well. The grass is always greener. Airbnb is trying to expand more in the vacation space, HomeAway is trying to expand more in the city space, but the bigger point is there's really a good amount of demand for this. The top cities being cities like Chicago and New York, Boston, Miami, cities where the hotel rates can be astronomical because they just don't have enough when they have big events coming in. And you can get this flex supply of properties, of inventory in these cities. And the next trend we've seen is what we call leisure travel. We did not invent the word or anything, but it's this blending of business and pleasure. Business and leisure travel, the idea being that, again, it's not just vacation rentals. It's truly alternative accommodation. And business travelers are increasingly looking to book these kinds of homes and these kinds of apartments when they go on business trips. And the reason being, there are a couple things going on. I mean, one is Airbnb and Uber and some of these have been very smart about partnering with corporate travel departments and saying, hey, let's just completely embed ourselves with you. They can expense it and Concur. We'll make it really easy. To the extent that Uber's overtaken taxis as a more expensed ground transportation option for business travel already, which is Shocking. The other piece here is it just opens up new avenues. As everybody who owns a vacation home knows, you're just offering something different and better in many ways than a sterile, cold hotel. And so if you were going to go on a business trip and you had to stay for 2 nights, you wanted to get home as soon as possible. You wanted to get out of that hotel, you were cramped, you wanted to get home. Now with the ability to rent through one of these booking platforms or through someone else, an apartment or a house with a kitchen and a yard or patio, you can bring your family on the trip. You can explore the city, and you're seeing that people who are doing this are staying twice as long, and they're really taking advantage of the places they're traveling, which again is another way that the pie is growing. This is the growth that Airbnb has been seeing just on the corporate side. You can see it's over 200% a year, which is, you know, for a company that's growing fast already, you throw that in the mix, and it just gives you an idea of if you do want to tap into this market, there's a huge market there to tap into. And really the way to do it is Airbnb makes it pretty clear. They have a business-ready program where you have to meet certain criteria. Do you have Wi-Fi? Do you have 24-hour access to the key? Do you have certain toiletries and towels and everything there? And once you get certified, then you show up under this business-ready program, and corporate travel departments can book on your property. So if you want to open up this market, there are ways to do it, and certainly try to tap in to some of those deeper pockets that you get with business travelers. And probably other than regulation, the most talked about trend, it looks like we may have lost the presentation. The most talked about trend is consolidation within the industry. And okay, I believe the screen is back up for everyone. I apologize for that hiccup. But what we're talking about here is consolidation within the industry. And there have been a number of deals. Expedia's acquisition for nearly $4 billion of HomeAway being probably the most well-known one. There's also Accor Hotels, the French company, for several billion, acquired Swiss Hotel, Fairmont, and Raffles. Marriott spent over $12 billion buying Starwood. Hyatt invested $40 million in One Fine Stay. And so why am I rattling all of these off? Well, there are 2 main reasons. One is the big players are getting bigger, and they're getting more similar, right? One Fine Stay used to be in the same conversation as Airbnb, and yet now it's partnered with Hyatt Hotels and vacation rentals, alternative accommodation, coming together. Expedia, known for flights and hotels, buying HomeAway, saying, hey, we are making a bet on the future being the sharing economy or vacation rentals or alternative accommodation, whatever you want to call it. The second reason being, we just threw out a bunch of big numbers, 40 million, 2.9 billion, 12.2 billion, 4 billion for HomeAway. The interesting thing with all those numbers is they pale in comparison to the $25.5 billion valuation that Airbnb currently has. And that really shows you where investors, where people believe the growth in travel will come. It's not building more hotels and leveling more buildings and cutting down more trees and building sterile rooms that are all in a box. It's people want unique travel experiences, and this alternative accommodation, vacation rental, sharing economy, whatever you want to call it, is what is best able to provide it. So huge, huge opportunity to tap in to that desire from travelers. So that is all of the past. Now let's look forward. What do we expect to see this year in 2016? Well, first, there was a lot of consolidation, I just mentioned. The big players are ever bigger. So what's one of the things they're going to do? They are going to flex their muscle. They're going to start taking a bigger cut of that pie. And one of the biggest ways they're doing this is in traveler fees. So Airbnb, virtually from the beginning, was charging both sides of the transaction. They charge you a booking fee on one side, as well as the host, they charge money. But TripAdvisor has started doing it, and now HomeAway is announced they're going to add a 6% booking fee as well. So, hey, there's money being spent here. How can we, now that we're bigger, leverage our size to get a bigger cut of that? And what's the implication for you? Well, think about this. If you're a traveler and you've set a travel budget, I can spend $1,000 for a week on vacation. Just because HomeAway is now going to charge you 6% does not mean you all of a sudden say, I will now spend $1,060. It means you will spend $1,000. And so someone is going to have to eat that extra $60, that extra 6% that used to be paid by the homeowner or by the guest. And so the impact on the business is this is going to squeeze margins. This is going to be tough because budgets are what budgets are. The next trend in 2016 is certainly not a new one. This is something that's been happening for the last 5 to 10 years, but it's just increasing and accelerating, is the growth of mobile. And it's, this says there's 17,000 travel apps out there. The average American household has 3 or more mobile devices, right? This is where people are increasingly looking for travel, looking to book their travel, engaging with that experience. And the implication is you have to always be on call. There's a reason. I was at an event with Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, when he got the question, if you could do it over, would you be a mobile-first company? And Brian said, that's the wrong question. I would be a mobile-only company. I wouldn't even have an online option. It would all be mobile. And the reason being, guests expect you to be online 100% of the time. And as a host, if you only are looking at what the guest is asking and wanting from you when you're logged into your computer, that's not good enough. I need you to be 24/7. When it buzzes at 3 a.m., I need you to pick it up and respond to that guest immediately. And so the implication is it's going to take a lot more work, whether it's getting you your home distributed on as many of these 17,000 apps as possible and integrating calendars and everything across, or it's being constantly responsive and on call in order to stay competitive. It's going to be difficult. It's going to take work, but those that put in the work are going to reap ever larger rewards.
Yeah, one quick question just came in from someone with multiple properties. They're asking, are there any apps out there that homeowners should be using specifically for their vacation rental?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big distribution sites have mobile apps, and they really want hosts to use those mobile apps to keep them engaged, as we were just talking about. There's also, last year, the year before, HomeAway acquired Glad to Have You, and then last year acquired Dwellable to really try to build out their mobile offering. And the idea is, and this was another thing at the same conference that Brian mentioned, was it was a really eye-opening moment for Airbnb when they realized that 98% of a traveler's experience was not on Airbnb. It was in the property. It was physically on the ground. And how could they shape that? And so that's why they're investing in mobile so much. That's why HomeAway invested in GoGoBot, because they want to put in the palm of the guest's hand the ability to, hey, let me have the online guest book here. How do I turn on the TV? Can I actually do it from the app? Is it all integrated? And as the expectation is consistently and constantly driving more towards, I expect my phone to do everything for me, then yes, I would certainly stay on top of what's out there. There's TouchStay that does digital guest books that help if you want to do it as a one-off. There are companies like Scout that help with local concierges. But there are a bunch of options out there, and the world we live in, there'll be 10 more by tomorrow morning, probably. There's new companies cropping up constantly in this space. Thank you for the question. Another piece we're seeing is instant bookings. And different owners feel differently about this, right? A lot of owners, the reason they're managing themselves. The reason they don't work with a manager and they want to keep the control is because they want the ability to vet their guests, to really dig in and get to know those guests before they go sleep in their bed. And the reality is, guests don't want that. Guests don't want it to take 10 inquiries and 9 days on average to book a vacation. Guests are used to going to Expedia, going to Kayak, going to Delta.com, and booking a flight instantly. They're used to going to Orbitz or Hotels.com or Marriott.com and booking a hotel instantly and knowing I have the room. Not, oh, I can be told in a few days whether I do or don't. And that being the case, the big companies, as they get more power, as they aggregate more guests, are moving more and more to instant booking because that is ultimately what the guests want. Looks like a couple questions came in.
Yeah. Look, so this one's kind of interesting. Is there an open source lead management tool that handles inquiries from the hundreds of vacation sites that is as strong as Salesforce?
Wow. Open source. So is there a free option that will pull from all of these? And I don't know if you're also asking about calendar management and pricing optimization and all this.
Not necessarily
free. Okay. Yeah. So there are a number of sites that do this. MyBookingPal, BookingSync, LeisureLink, that would help aggregate, right? Saying, hey, work with us as one provider, making it easy. Get your property up, and we will get you out on all the right channels. We will update your pricing on all the right channels. We will update your calendar on all the right channels. Because yes, trying to manage your property across 17,000 channels and inquiries and bookings and is my calendar updated? Oh no, FlipKey is not updated to what I just booked on VRBO is a nightmare. And nothing's going to get you bad reviews faster than not having an updated calendar and guests not being able to tell can they book or not.
There's another question.
So here's the other one. So let's see what else has come up there. Yeah, so just in general, following up with leads and auto responses and, just the integration into the API. Can you elaborate on that at all?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
That, a lead management tool that not only follows up with leads, but does the auto response.
Yeah, LeisureLink is a very robust tool for that. I don't know if there are a lot that are really designed for individual owners. I mean, most of these are built around big businesses, right? Because if you're going to pay per booking or pay per property on your system, they want customers with more bookings or more properties on their system. There are companies like One Rooftop, used to be Web Chalet, and others that work with some of the smaller players. But yeah, there are definitely providers out there, and the question's really going to come, are they price competitive for you as an owner if you only have 2 to 3 homes versus 30 to 40 or thousands?
Sure. Yes, and that's for the person asking that one, feel free to take this offline later. Be happy to talk about this in more detail. We've just had some other ones coming through. One of the ones you've been talking a lot about Airbnb. The question the homeowner goes is, hey, they've been using VRBO. Isn't that one traditionally been the best for vacation rentals? And then how does Airbnb and compare to VRBO?
Yeah, that is pretty much true. So historically, because VRBO is 2 or 3 times as old as Airbnb, it was better for it because it was around for a lot longer. It's what people knew and showed up on. And now they are still stronger in most vacation destinations other than Lake Tahoe, because a lot of Silicon Valley goes to Lake Tahoe and they all know Airbnb. And then Airbnb is stronger in urban markets. But back to what we were talking about, that growth of the city initiative from Home Away, as well as Airbnb's push to get into more professionally managed inventory and more vacation markets. The grass is always greener. Both are expanding. And really, I think as an owner who's looking to maximize bookings, you don't necessarily want to pick just one. Your whole point is you want to get in front of as many interested guests as possible. And as long as you have an easy way that doesn't take you 10, 12 hours a week to manage across those platforms, That's how you're going to maximize your bookings and maximize your revenue.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the questions. Yeah, these are really good. Keep them coming, please. So we talked a little bit about consolidation. We've talked about instant booking. We've talked about the demand from travelers for the mobile experience and constant access. And so what we're seeing with all of this is another trend that we've started to see in 2015 and bleeding into 2016 is an increasing distrust of major players. As these players start to make changes, people who have worked with them for 5, for 10 years are starting to get increasingly frustrated. We've had a number of owners call in and reach out, saying, look, I'm scared, right? I've been on X site, I'm not going to throw any site under the bus, for 5 years, for 8 years, and I've always been on page 1, and I've always had great bookings and revenue, and my bookings are down 70% already this year from what I expected, and I'm now showing up on page 5, and this scares me. And it's the result of best match. It's a result of how they're deciding what to show. So all of this to say, looking forward, what do we expect? And it is that 2016 will be the year of the customer. This is in 2 different ways. This kind of means 2 different things. One is it's going to be the year that the big sites and the big companies and the big players show who the true customer is. It's the volume, and the volume is the traveler. The product, the service is going to be built around the traveler. That's what's driving instant booking. That's what's driving best match. And as that customer is defined, as it builds the products and the services around what those customers want, people that are used to the old way of operating may feel increasingly isolated. You're going to have to adapt, and you're likely going to have to spend a lot more time and effort than you traditionally did. So this thus puts homeowners in a world in which you really have to make a decision. So you have to decide one way: are you going to give up control and say, I want the instant booking, I want to maximize revenue, I'm going to work with these big sites regardless of what, and put in the time? Or do you say, look, I want my independence, I want to vet every renter, and so I can't really work with the big sites, and I'm going to need to find new channels to do it. But it's going to be very difficult to try to straddle between those 2 worlds. I mean, really, as an owner, if you're trying to rent out your home, there are 3 things that you're trying to optimize for, right? You want to get in front of as many potential guests as possible. You want to know that the guests that you ultimately allow into your home, sleeping in your bed, eating in your kitchen, are guests that you trust. And you want to make sure that you get booked, right? You want to show up top when people are searching for properties. You want to be top of the heap. So there are different options out there for you that give you relatively different weightings on these criteria. So one is continue to self-manage and use those big listing sites, right? That is how you're going to get, by using those big listing sites, how you're going to get the most guests. You're going to get in front of them the most, but you are going to have to sacrifice the ability to vet those guests. And depending how much time you're able to put into it and be constantly responsive and allow for instant booking and engaging with guests at 3 in the morning, it's going to be difficult to stay prioritized on these big OTAs. Thus, your second option is to go with an independent site, building your own website or one of the smaller players more catered to individual owners and their wants and needs as opposed to the guest wants and needs. But what you get in terms of guest vetting and control over your guests, you end up losing in terms of getting in front of the number of guests you want and being prioritized by the big online travel agencies like Expedia, like Booking.com, because you're not on them at all, right? You've decided, you made a conscious decision to pull off of them. And so this is where we get to the third option, and obviously being rented, I have to do a little bit of a rented plug, but it's the professionally managed option, where the professional manager, having in place background checks, global fraud and crime databases that they're running their guests through instantly, so they can still allow for instant booking, but still do the vetting, gives you that guest vetting, while at the same time giving you access to the biggest pool of guests and to get that prioritization. And so whether it's a manager that you know locally and you've built a relationship with, or one you find on your own, or it's one that you find through Rented. You know, we have 500 management companies across the world in all different markets looking to grow, and they compete against each other to sign up homeowners, and so we guarantee those homeowners get the best possible deal out there. So again, you could do all the work, or you could relax and let Rented take care of it for you.
Yeah, and this has been great. We've had a bunch of other questions come through. Appreciate you guys engaging during this. The first one here is someone who came in a little late. They were asking about what's the best way to find a reliable cleaner and possibly separate the calendars to supervise the cleaner and greet guests, etc. They're saying they're down there during the summer, and when they're not down there, how do they kind of manage that, particularly the cleaning and greeting the guests?
Yeah, that's insanely difficult. So rolling back to the two questions that in different guises came in the entire time, and part of the reason we created this webinar, right, was number one, how do I handle and manage on-the-ground operations when I'm not there? And number two, how do I increase bookings? And the issue is, look, most of these properties are in markets where it's difficult to get people to work hard. People who live in ski markets would rather go ski than show up for work. People who live at beach markets want to go to the beach. So there's no silver bullet to say, oh yeah, I have a great property guy, unless you just luck out and you find your one local manager. I mean, you really need an on-the-ground presence. And so homeowners that live next door or in the same neighborhood have a much easier time managing that because they can physically see the work being done and stay on top of it. If not, and this is not just because I have a vested interest in working with managers, it really is much better to have a local manager because you have someone who has skin in the game to make sure that everything's getting taken care of. There are services out there, so providing different levels of management, whether it's Guesty, whether it's My VR Partners, or the bigger full-service management companies. They're different tiers, whether you want to go full-service management or just doing some of the booking or doing some of the on-the-ground operations. But that was a long way to say a short answer, which is there's no easy answer. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you started to talk a little bit about the kind of PM versus doing it yourself there. One of the questions here is about when it comes to an OTA, how do they look at a PM? If the manager's managing the home, or if it's an owner just renting it out themselves. Do you have any thoughts on how that's prioritized?
Yeah, and so just for those to give some context, OTA again is online travel agency, and so this is things like Expedia, Booking.com, Priceline, Orbitz, Kayak, and this is kind of their secret sauce, right? So it's similar to Google's algorithm, that they have an algorithm deciding what am I going to show, and that's not something they decided and set, and 5 years later it's the same. It's something that they are constantly using artificial intelligence to improve their intelligence. And when I show guests X, do they book? Do they click more? Are they more likely to book? And they're constantly improving. So there's no one answer to what that is. But what does matter is, do guests book it? And what do guests care about? And sure, a lot of reviews, highly, highly important. Responsiveness is hugely important. And then just thinking through, what do these companies care about? They care about making money. So the ones that may help me make the most money, i.e. they're on a pay-per-booking, they're instantly bookable, I can track the money they're paying through me, probably going to get some pride place placement. Also, if you're a big company that's paying for 400 listings as opposed to an owner paying for one, and you're paying for premium subscriptions as opposed to lower tiers, you'd have to think you're getting something for that.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess, continuing on kind of the property management thing, another one here, just asking, any recommendation on the best PM and channel manager combo that combines, the hotel channel OTA world with the vacation world as the market, as hotel channel, like in the same way hotel channels are doing in vacation homes. They asked a question earlier, so kind of the best PM channel manager combo that kind of replicates running a hotel. like turning your vacation home almost into a hotel?
I have to be completely honest. I do not understand the question. I mean, a property manager and a channel manager are very different things. Like,
Sure.
the property manager is going to use different channel managers to distribute their properties. So the property manager, what you're really signing on for is deal with those terribly complex and painful on-the-ground operations, and you deal with the headache of figuring out what the right channels are and making me the most money.
Okay.
And what the right channel manager is, again, it really depends on the business. It depends on the location.
Yeah.
The big ones out there, LeisureLink, BookingSync, MyBookingPal, they all help get distribution on a myriad of different distribution channels.
Yeah, and you know, one of the other ones that came through there is, what should homeowners be thinking about in terms of staging their homes for maximum revenue, just in general?
Yeah, so the big thing there is, what do guests look for? Well, first, they want as many people to stay there as possible a lot of times. So do you have a lot of beds? Did you put 2 twin beds or 2 double beds or 2 queen beds as opposed to 1 king or 1 queen? The reason they're staying in these homes as opposed to hotels is they want to get everyone under one roof. So really use it to try to set it up for maximum occupancy to still be comfortable. The second piece, and I think this was what people said they cared the most about, is the kitchen, right? Where do people socialize? They socialize when they're cooking. They socialize when they're eating. If you can invest and take beautiful pictures of not just the kitchen and what's there, but also where they would be sitting, outdoor spaces, things like that, just think about, why is it that people are coming to your home in the first place? If you're a ski in, ski out, really play that up. Show how close you are to it. If you're right on the beach, really play that up. You're just steps away. Here's that view. So the staging, it's not one single answer other than maximum occupancy and kitchen. And then what other amenities or features you play up really is going to depend on what market you're in and what the guest is looking for.
Great.
Well, I think we're bumping up right against time, so I appreciate everyone who took almost an hour on this Thursday night with us. And if you have any further questions, please do reach out. We have a number of different, I don't even know what all the logos mean, but we have a lot of social media channels with which you can find us. And I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you all.
Thanks.